This is the most inhumane design in history. It looks like a submarine. In fact, it's a manned torpedo. After activation, the death rate of the pilot inside is 100%. This is Japan's Oka torpedo. Although there is a hatch on it, there's also another hatch at the bottom. In fact, once the pilot enters, the hatch will automatically be sealed. Whether the mission succeeds or not, the pilot has no chance of survival. Although the entire torpedo is 5 meters long, the warhead itself is only 1/8 of that size. The rest is mainly used for the oxygen tank. This oxygen is not for the pilot to breathe. It is fuel for the torpedo's propulsion. There are 8 compressed gas cylinders on the oxygen tank. They are used to steer the torpedo. The small space in the middle is the cockpit. The torpedo is usually placed on the submarine's deck. The captain, when necessary, can access the torpedo via a specialized passage on the submarine. Inside, it's not only cramped, but even all the operating equipment is very rudimentary. Besides the autopilot, the torpedo's rotation and the forward-looking periscope are all operated with an old-fashioned hand crank. There's also a pull bar at the top. A light pull starts the torpedo. Once the pilot leaves the submarine, the connection to the submarine is severed. But in order to hit the target, the pilot must learn to hold their breath because the accumulating fumes in the cockpit make it hard to breathe. Fortunately, they often keep a can of peroxide inside. Occasionally sprinkling it out makes breathing much easier. The pilot observes the direction using the forward sight. Once they spot the target, it's a suicide attack. This is something extremely harmful and selfless. They had once used up 9 torpedoes like this, exploding into a passenger ship. The remaining ones were mostly destroyed before launch, smashed by the enemy or the submarine. As the saying goes, where there's a Wulong, there will be a phoenix. The band have an even crazier invention. They made soldiers wear diving suits, carrying a 5-meter bamboo stick. On it was a samurai mine. They would hide at the bottom of the water to ram old American warships. To increase the damage capability, the amount of explosive ahead of the bamboo pole was very large. Once it exploded, the diver had no chance of survival. Besides using the bamboo stick underwater, they also invented a weapon for use on land, used to stab tanks. Perhaps anti-tank guns were too expensive. This type only required 3 nails. Much cheaper. Just get close to the tank, and it could guarantee a very high secondary weight ratio. The strength of the explosion is said to be able to penetrate 15 centimeters of steel. Nearly 20 iPhones stacked thickly, with such a high damage potential. Holding it in your hand and exploding, it's hard not to die because of these strange weapons, both at sea and on land. Even the natural paradise isn't lacking. They didn't forget to equip the missile with a cockpit. Then they sent a pilot who wasn't afraid to die. Let's go. This missile actually has no landing equipment. Once it's launched, don't expect to come back in one piece. The goal is to sever the pilot. All hope of survival depends on a rooster for launch. The range is very short, only 36 kilometers. The entire missile is only 6 meters long, 60 centimeters wide. Using manual guidance, it uses a simple 3-stage structure. At the front is a massive warhead, made of high-strength alloy steel, capable of detonating on impact with a fighter plane. It can also be manually triggered by the pilot. There are 3 rocket engines mounted on the plane's tail. Fuel is packed in high-temperature resistant materials. However, this is also a one-time use. Once ignited, the engine cannot be turned off until the fuel runs out. Each engine lasts only about 10 seconds. To extend the range, the 3 engines don't start at the same time. They use a sequential method for flight. Once the fuel runs out, it will glide for a while. Then the pilot decides the time for the next engine to start and the last remaining engine. Until the old American warship is seen, the pilot will ignite. He runs as fast as he can, and at the moment of impact, he drives the warhead into the ship. It must be said that he is very lethal, but riding a missile to die, the show of boys trembled in fear. In actual combat, it was very hard to hit the target. During World War II, the overall performance was not very outstanding.